There are certain alcoholic beverages that have been used for centuries in occult rituals, spirit summoning, and demonic invocations, yet millions of people consume them daily without knowing their dark spiritual origins. These drinks weren't just created for pleasure, they were specifically crafted as gateways for supernatural entities to enter our physical realm. The Bible warns us in 1 Corinthians 10:21, "You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons." What most Christians don't realize is that some alcoholic drinks are literally cups of demons, beverages that open spiritual doors and invite demonic presence into your life. Throughout history, pagan cultures have used specific alcoholic concoctions to communicate with evil spirits and perform witchcraft rituals. Many of these ancient practices continue today, hidden in plain sight within modern drinking culture. Today, we're going to expose 5 alcoholic drinks that have deep roots in the occult and continue to attract demonic presence wherever they're consumed. We'll work our way to the most shocking revelation that will completely change how you view modern drinking culture. If you want to protect yourself and your family from these spiritual dangers that most churches never warn about, subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and comment the country you're watching from so we can see how many nations God is using to spread this crucial warning to His people worldwide. Share this video with other Christians who need to know these biblical truths before they unknowingly open doors to demonic influence. Now, let's begin with the first drink that has terrified spiritual warfare experts for over 200 years. Absinthe, known as the Green Fairy, emerged in 18th century Switzerland, but gained its notorious reputation in 19th century France, where it became the drink of choice for occultists, witches, and those seeking supernatural experiences. This emerald-colored spirit was marketed not just as alcohol, but as a gateway to spiritual realms and mystical visions. The drink's signature ingredient, wormwood, Artemisia absinthium, was specifically chosen for its psychoactive properties and its connection to ancient pagan rituals. Here's the red flag that should alarm every Christian. Absinthe was deliberately crafted to induce altered states of consciousness that practitioners believed would allow communication with spiritual entities. The Bible specifically mentions wormwood as a symbol of divine judgment and spiritual bitterness in Revelation 8:11. The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it had been made bitter. What makes absinthe particularly dangerous from a spiritual perspective is its direct connection to what occultists call fairy spirits, entities that are actually demonic beings masquerading as benevolent mystical creatures. French occultist Eliphas Lévy documented how absinthe was used in seances and spirit-summoning rituals throughout the 1800s, with practitioners specifically invoking the Green Fairy as a spiritual guide. The wormwood compound contains thujone, a neurotoxin that creates hallucinations and altered mental states. Exactly what witches and spiritists needed to receive messages from evil spirits. This directly contradicts what Jesus Christ taught about spiritual communion, which should only be with God the Father through His Son. As Jesus declared in John 14:6, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." But what's even more disturbing is how this demonic deception continues today. This drink, despite appearing to be simply a unique alcoholic beverage, is fundamentally rooted in practices that directly oppose biblical Christianity and open doors to demonic influence. During its peak popularity in France, absinthe addiction destroyed entire families and communities, creating a generation dependent not just on alcohol, but on supernatural experiences that only grew stronger with increased consumption. Historical accounts document how regular absinthe drinkers experienced persistent supernatural harassment, nightmares, and gradual spiritual bondage that continued even after they stopped drinking. The Bible warns us in 2 Corinthians 11:14 that Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light, and the green fairy is a perfect example of this deception, a beautiful mystical image that conceals a doorway to spiritual destruction. But if you found that concerning, what we're about to reveal next about our second drink is even more shocking, because it's still being used in modern occult practices across multiple continents. Ouzo, the traditional Greek anise-flavored aperitif, carries a dark spiritual heritage that traces back to ancient Greek mystery religions and demonic worship practices that predate Christianity by centuries. This clear spirit, which turns milky white when mixed with water, was originally created as part of ritualistic libations offered to Greek gods and goddesses, entities that the Bible clearly identifies as demons. In disguise, the transformation from clear to cloudy wasn't seen as a simple chemical reaction, but as a supernatural manifestation representing the arrival of spiritual beings into the physical realm. Archaeological evidence from ancient Greek temples shows that anise-based spirits were specifically used in rituals dedicated to Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy, whose worship involved frenzied dancing, sexual immorality, and direct communication with evil spirits. The Bible warns us in 1 Corinthians 10:20, "No, but the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God, and I do not want you to be participants with demons." The spiritual danger of ouzo extends far beyond its ancient origins, because modern Greek Orthodox and Mediterranean occult practices still incorporate this drink in ways that directly contradict biblical Christianity. In rural Greece and Cyprus, traditional folk magic practitioners known as Magissa continue to use ouzo in rituals designed to communicate with ancestral spirits and invoke supernatural protection, practices that are fundamentally spiritistic and forbidden by Scripture. These rituals often involve pouring ouzo on graves, offering it to household shrines containing pagan symbols, and consuming it while reciting incantations passed down through generations of witchcraft. What makes this particularly deceptive is that these practices are often mixed with Christian symbols and language, creating a syncretic spirituality that appears Christian but operates through demonic power. Jesus Christ made it clear in Matthew 6:24 that no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve Christ while participating in practices rooted in demon worship. What's even more concerning is how ouzo consumption has been documented to trigger supernatural experiences and spiritual oppression in people who had no knowledge of its occult connections. Missionary reports from Greece describe multiple cases of new Christian converts who experienced demonic harassment and spiritual attacks, specifically after consuming ouzo at family gatherings or cultural events. The anise compound in ouzo, combined with its high alcohol content, creates a physiological state that occultists have recognized for millennia as conducive to spiritual manifestations and demonic communication. The Bible commands us in Ephesians 5:18, "And do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit." Ouzo doesn't just cause physical intoxication, it opens spiritual doors that can take years of prayer and deliverance to close. Now, pay close attention to our third drink, because what we're about to reveal about this next beverage involves practices so dark that many spiritual warfare ministers refuse to discuss them publicly. Mezcal, the Mexican spirit famous for the worm floating in its bottle, represents one of the most blatant examples of modern occultism hiding in plain sight within mainstream drinking culture. This agave-based alcohol originated from pre-Columbian Aztec and Zapotec civilizations, where it was used exclusively in religious ceremonies dedicated to serpent gods and death deities that demanded human sacrifice. The production process itself was considered sacred, with shamans overseeing every step and invoking specific spirits to inhabit the final product. The infamous worm, known as gusano, isn't just a marketing gimmick. It's a deliberate continuation of ancient practices where consuming insects or larvae was believed to transfer the spiritual power of earth-dwelling demons into the person drinking the mezcal. The Bible explicitly warns against such practices in Deuteronomy 18:10-12. There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer or a charmer or a medium or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. The spiritual deception surrounding mezcal becomes even more dangerous when you understand that modern Mexican brujos, witches, and curanderos, healers, continue to use this specific alcohol in rituals designed to communicate with death spirits and invoke supernatural power for both healing and cursing. These practitioners specifically seek out mezcal brands that follow traditional production methods, believing that mass-produced versions lack the spiritual potency of authentically crafted bottles. The consumption ritual involves specific prayers to Mictlantecutli, the Aztec god of death, and other demonic entities associated with the underworld. What makes this particularly insidious is that many of these practices have been romanticized and exported as authentic Mexican spirituality to Western consumers who have no idea they're participating in actual demon worship. Jesus Christ declared in John 10:10 that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. These ancient practices that mezcal represents are designed to steal, kill, and destroy, the exact opposite of what Christ offers. The physical and spiritual consequences of consuming mezcal extend far beyond typical alcohol consumption, with documented cases of people experiencing supernatural oppression, nightmares featuring serpentine entities, and gradual involvement in New Age and occult practices after developing a taste for this traditional spirit. The worm itself serves as a point of spiritual contact, with occultists teaching that eating it creates a permanent spiritual bond with the earth spirits that governed its creation. Modern deliverance ministries report that mezcal consumption is frequently found in the spiritual histories of people seeking freedom from supernatural oppression and demonic harassment. The Bible warns us in 1 Peter 5:8 to be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Mezcal, with its deliberate incorporation of occult symbolism and demonic invocation, represents exactly the kind of spiritual trap that Satan uses to devour unsuspecting souls. And now, prepare yourself for something even more disturbing, because our fourth drink involves a form of ancestor worship that millions practice without realizing they're violating the first commandment. Sake, Japan's traditional rice wine, carries one of the most extensive histories of spiritual manipulation and ancestor worship in the alcoholic beverage world, with its production and consumption being inseparably linked to Shinto religious practices that directly violate biblical commandments about worshipping the one true God. For over 2,000 years, sake has been considered sacred in Japanese culture, not as a mere alcoholic beverage, but as a medium through which kami, spirits, communicate with the living and receive worship from humans. Every aspect of sake production, from the selection of rice to the fermentation process, involves ritual purification ceremonies and offerings to multiple spirits that Shintoism teaches inhabit natural elements. The final product isn't just alcohol, it's literally considered to be inhabited by spiritual entities that demand reverence and worship. The Bible clearly commands in Exodus 23, "You shall have no other gods before Me. Yet sake consumption inherently involves acknowledging and honoring spiritual entities other than the God of the Bible. The spiritual danger of sake becomes even more apparent when you understand how it's used in modern Japanese religious practices that continue to flourish even in contemporary society. Shinto shrines throughout Japan still perform daily rituals where sake is offered to ancestral spirits and various kami, with practitioners believing that consuming this blessed sake creates a spiritual connection between the living and the dead. These practices directly contradict biblical teachings about the afterlife and communication with deceased individuals. The Bible warns in Isaiah 8:19, "And when they say to you, 'Inquire of the mediums and the necromancers who chirp and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God? Should they inquire of the dead on behalf of the living?'" Japanese Buddhist temples also incorporate sake in ceremonies designed to honor deceased family members and seek their continued involvement in earthly affairs, creating a form of ancestor worship that places human spirits in positions that belong only to Jesus Christ as our mediator with God. What makes sake particularly deceptive for Christians is how its consumption has been normalized and even celebrated in Western culture, with many believers unknowingly participating in spiritual practices rooted in polytheism and ancestor worship. When someone drinks sake, especially in traditional settings or during cultural ceremonies, they're participating in a spiritual system that acknowledges multiple gods and spiritual mediators, a direct violation of Jesus Christ's exclusive role as our high priest and mediator. The Bible declares in 1 Timothy 2:5, "For there is one God, and there is one mediator between God and men, the man Christ Jesus." Every sip of sake consumed in traditional contexts reinforces a spiritual worldview that diminishes Christ's unique position and opens doors to demonic influence disguised as cultural appreciation. Christian missionaries working in Japan report that sake consumption often correlates with spiritual bondage and difficulty accepting the exclusivity of salvation through Jesus Christ alone. But what we're about to reveal next about our final drink will shock you, because it involves a form of witchcraft that's spreading rapidly through Western culture and may already be affecting someone you know. Vodka, particularly traditional Eastern European varieties, represents perhaps the most widespread and dangerous example of an alcoholic beverage specifically designed for and continuously used in active witchcraft and demonic invocation rituals that are spreading rapidly throughout Western societies. Originating in medieval Russia and Poland, vodka was initially created by Orthodox monks and local healers as a base for tinctures and potions used in folk magic practices that combined Christian symbols with pagan sorcery. The clear, tasteless nature of vodka made it perfect for dissolving herbs, roots, and other substances used in spells, curses, and supernatural manipulation. Traditional Slavic witches, known as Vedma or Baba, developed specific rituals using vodka to invoke household spirits, called domovoi, and to communicate with deceased ancestors for supernatural guidance and power. The Bible explicitly condemns such practices in Leviticus 19:31. "Do not turn to mediums or necromancers. Do not seek them out, and so make yourselves unclean by them. I am the Lord your God." The spiritual danger of vodka extends far beyond its historical origins, because modern practitioners of Slavic witchcraft and neo-paganism actively use commercially available vodka brands in contemporary spells and rituals designed to manipulate people, situations, and spiritual forces. These practices have spread through Russian immigrant communities, New Age spirituality movements, and even social media platforms where Slavic magic is promoted as authentic spiritual practice. Witches specifically prefer vodka because its high alcohol content and neutral flavor allow it to absorb and carry spiritual intentions more effectively than other alcoholic beverages. Documented rituals include pouring vodka on photographs while reciting incantations, mixing it with blood or bodily fluids for love spells, and consuming it during seances to enhance communication with evil spirits. What makes this particularly dangerous for Christians is that these practices often target unsuspecting individuals, meaning someone could be spiritually affected by vodka-based witchcraft without their knowledge or consent. Jesus Christ warned in Luke 10:19, "Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you." However, this protection requires awareness and active resistance against spiritual attacks. The most alarming aspect of vodka's connection to witchcraft is how it's being used in modern curse work and spiritual manipulation, targeting Christians and Christian families specifically. Deliverance. Ministries across North America and Europe report increasing cases of believers experiencing supernatural oppression, financial difficulties, relationship problems, and health issues that can be traced back to vodka-based hexes and curses performed by practitioners of Slavic witchcraft. These attacks often manifest after consuming vodka at social gatherings, restaurants, or events, where the alcohol may have been spiritually contaminated through ritual preparation. The Bible warns us in Ephesians 6:11, "Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil." Vodka consumption, especially in social or cultural contexts, can unknowingly expose Christians to spiritual warfare they're unprepared to handle. Unlike the other drinks we've discussed, vodka represents an active, ongoing spiritual battlefield where believers must exercise extreme caution and spiritual discernment to protect themselves and their families from demonic influence disguised as harmless social drinking. These 5 alcoholic drinks reveal how Satan has infiltrated something as common as social drinking to create pathways for demonic influence and spiritual deception in the lives of unsuspecting people worldwide. The Bible warns us in Matthew 7:15, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." These beverages appear harmless on the surface, but their deep roots in occultism, witchcraft, and demon worship make them spiritual wolf in sheep's clothing that can devastate lives and families. That's why knowing the Word of God and understanding spiritual warfare is crucial, so you won't be deceived by practices that seem cultural or harmless, but actually oppose everything Christ represents. Make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now for more shocking biblical truths that will protect your spiritual life and strengthen your faith. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 drinks shocked you the most? Comment below, along with the country you're watching from, so we can see how far God is spreading this warning to His people. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends and family who need this truth. Their spiritual safety may depend on it. May God bless you and keep you safe from all forms of spiritual deception.